Alrighty, so week 6 in CIT 93 JavaScript. I love JavaScript. I think I've told you, but I actually really do. Um, a couple things I want to go over today. One is I want to follow up with something that was discussed a couple of weeks back, where I asked students like, how much forward did you want to see? And in that week, I ended up posting to several of the students who replied that they wanted to see more a link that I'm not sure everybody got to see, so I thought this would be a good time to talk about it. So, moving forward, and actually, let's just go look at it first. I've given you this link right here, okay? This link is to just a standard HTML document that has links to week 9, week 10, and week 11. So, when we get to those weeks in the course, we'll be having one less code along, and then once we finish the code discussion, then you will do these steps. And basically this is creating a decision-making app based on what we've already learned in this class. Okay, so it's not as if you have to do something we haven't covered. You will come up with some type of decision-making app that you will then, in each step, and, I kind of preface this, I did put some warnings on it, is that, this instruction, this write up is from last semester, are subject to change in this semester. I will tell you right now, I don't intend to make major changes, but if you're someone who's thinking of working ahead, every step is going to be in its own folder, so that's important. And come in and talk to me. I mean, that would be the other thing, is like come in and chat with me about it. Just to, if you, and again, it's not a requirement, but I will tell you at the end of the third step, which we will continue working on this the rest of the semester, but those first three is when the window for the code review opens, and you have to have had those three complete in order to come into a code review, because that's part of what's covered in the code review. Okay, so I just want to give you that. So you can check these out. Like I said, I've just anchor linked each one in here if you want to do that. But just to help you kind of see going forward too after week 6, which I'll come back around to in a minute, we're going to learn how to render HTML, creating a table. And this gets to something that we start talking about called a CRUD app. So in this class where we're doing the carbon footprint, we're gathering the user data, and that's actually what we start doing this week, because you've been, for the most part, actually just running code like the start function and passing arguments into the functions. But now it's time we actually take this to where really in JavaScript we get user data. And this is the beginning of CRUD, create. So create, read, update, and delete, which is here on week 8 officially, but we start doing it even before then, because once we get the user input, right, once they give us their carbon data of size and members, which by the way, by the end of the semester, we do complete the whole thing. We just use the first couple of inputs to then implement CRUD. But my point about this is that this CRUD, it's not just about getting the user input, it's about storing the user input, this data structure we use to do that, and then how we present back that data. So create, read, back to the data, update, give the user the ability to update that data and delete that data. And those are just fairly common functions for most apps. And knowing how to do them in JavaScript is good. Okay, so as we move forward to week 9, then we have that first, and we do some data validation, custom form validation, way important. Our code gets so big, we end up creating modules, which is really handy. I think once you understand them, they sure start to make sense, because otherwise our files just become a lot of JavaScript, and sometimes it's just hard. And what it allows you to do is take a concept and put it like the rendering function or the rendering functions into its own module. Okay, but here in week 9, then we have our first step, our second step in week 10. And here's where we're revisiting functions. We're going to end up using arrow functions because, they're just more modern name functions as well. We cover OOP, object-oriented programming, and then we have step 3. So in order for you to sign up for the code review, you have to have done step 3 and be up to date with the course. And so the window opens here, and then you'll sign up, and then actually we'll start the following week. It'll say May 15th, but it opens on March 21st and closes on May 15th. And so again, I've talked about that concept, so hopefully you have that idea of when, I recommend, if you're new, come in earlier. And actually anyone can come in whenever. Just know if you don't get in until like 2 weeks forward from this, like step 5, 4, and 5, then that will be covered under the code review. We'll talk about that in more detail as we get closer. But also, it's a pretty good percentage. I think it's 25% of your overall grade. And actually, in here, I think I talk about this because I actually talk about 20%, right? So it's and are they optional? Yeah, I mean, if you didn't come in for one and you had enough of a grade, it's totally up to you, right? But they're good to do. I actually had somebody shout out on Discord the other day about the benefit of doing them and how it helped them get a job, which I was so happy to hear. Here's my point. Even once the window opens, we've done step 3. We continue to work at our decision app, and we continue to extend the functionality of our carbon footprint. So we're learning new things in the carbon footprint, and we're implementing things we've already learned into the decision app. And in this sense, we're covering the information from the first week to in this case, we could consider maybe the 10th or the 9th week. We're covering it again, but in this sense, you're covering it by writing an app based on what you've learned. Okay? So that's how this will go. And then it will change a little bit once we get into the steps in writing our decision in those weeks. Because as I said, I'll drop one of the code alongs, which means we cover a little less information. Okay, so that's how it goes. I give you a link. Any questions about that, check in with me. Okay, I do want to say a word about this is because I just want students to know who are taking 82 or 85, which is Intro to Web Development or HTML and CSS. There's some students in this class who have not taken those classes because it's not a requirement for them because they're not in the web developer program. So I end up kind of not implementing some things as web developer students we know how to do. And I am very light on my HTML and CSS. So I'm just going to tell you that, and that's the reason. And it's something I've kind of struggled with, but at the same time, I really love that there are students in here that are meeting the requirement at Fresno State for programming and some that are in different programs. So, there's always two sides to that. Okay, and then code formatting is important. You want to do code formatting because code formatting, like you might be somebody that just is used to hitting a return and it goes to, it lines up. Let me just show you because I actually did some just a minute ago. I was playing with the file I published actually. Oh yeah, where I had it right here. I was playing with this HTML file and it was just not looking great. So I selected the whole thing and I went in and you could do either format selection or if you want to use, and notice it actually ends up doing word wrap. It organizes the code. Now this is HTML, but the same is true with JavaScript. I'm just going to tell you it's great. There's a extension you could get called Prettier. I may have talked about it. Definitely recommend it because it just makes your code prettier. And prettier code is easier to read. And I read your code. So, you want to do that. You've all been doing a pretty good job about commits. Just keep that pattern going of each week. And you might wonder why I want the commits for that week. Honestly, because I want less to look at. There's just a lot of things I have to go through in code. And it also shows me you're paying attention to detail. Code challenges, code challenges become more challenging the further we get into the course. So One thing I say about code challenges is that attempt it. If you don't get working code, tell me what you've tried, and I will give you most of the points if you do that. But really, what I want to see is your code attempt and what you've tried, right? Because then you, of course, watch the solution to know what the solution is. But if you don't, and I've said this before, and I think I may even said it last week, if you don't give yourself that moment of trying, like here's the code challenge, right? How do you implement that? And then you try it. If you don't give yourself that space, the code review is going to be challenging. That's just the way I could be completely wrong about that, but it's just what I've seen. Okay. Okay, so this week, as I had already started to allude to, but I kind of skipped over week 6. This week, we now move to forms and learn how to render output to the DOM. So this is one of those pivotal weeks. We cover a lot, and understanding how to set up forms, why we have to prevent default behavior is important. As you hear me talk about why we have to, prevent default behavior, you want to pay attention to that. That was actually a question that last semester I asked during code review that students really did not understand. They thought it was something different about validation, and it's not. So if you get there and you still don't understand it, ask me. Why do we use prevent default behavior? Okay. Okay, so and then we do render to the DOM, and then you're going to add something to the carbon footprint now that you'll have the basics of the form. Okay. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to end with is that I have been assigned to work on the grant inside the business education area for implementing AI into the classroom. And I've been thinking about this because I'm first looking at my own course and thinking about ways I can do it. And here's some of my thoughts, and I would love to get your input about what you would like to see. Because of course as students you'd like to see the answers, right? But that doesn't help you, and AI is there to help you learn, not to do it for you. And so one thing I've been thinking of is actually just taking all of my course content, my video transcripts, all the instruction, my syllabus, and placing it in, because you can take these large language models, these chatbots, right, and you can have it focus on your domain of data. And that way you could, if you had a question, you could go there and ask it a question related to that. That was kind of one of my first things. And the next thing I've been thinking about is a commit assistant, to where if you wanted to pre-check your commits before you submit them to see if there was something like what percentage did you get of the commits, and give you some highlights. It's not going to give you all the what, because that would be, it'd be just natural to want to see all those. I've been thinking about that. So what are the ways, given what you're all coming with different experiences of AI, so that's why it's helpful. Like, what would you want to see in a course like this, or any course, really? You could give me either. I'm cool with that too, because I'm also helping other instructors in this area. Like, what kind of AI would you want to see? Because we see many examples out there right now. Like Khan Academy has a really good one. I mean, they've spent they worked with OpenAI early on, even before version 4 of ChatGPT. And then Harvard has done a really good job. David Malin at CS50, who I've actually corresponded with about what they're doing. And then there was a recent coding train example that was put out by Google that was very interesting, basically helping students as they're coding. There are also, of course, co-pilots that are out there. I mean, that's not even specific to this course. These are just tools that help you code. But as I've said before, I think those are more targeted, in my opinion, just to programmers who have knowledge. Because if you don't have the knowledge and you're trying to get it to write code for you, you won't have the knowledge. Because in order to use them, you do need to have some level. But, also who am I to say how these things are going to be used? Because I don't know. But I am somebody looking at this on the campus, so your input is valuable, as always with everything. In this specific, I'm being very specific about where I would like to get your input, if you have it. But you could also ask me about anything I've covered today. Okay, now, last thing I will say is this video right here. You do want to follow this because I do end up doing a little bit of coding before we start into week 6. So make sure you have that done. Make sure you do that commit so that you have that ready over in your private repo. And week 6, there we go. Have a good one. See you later.